Hi everyone, Aaron here for Zollotech, and iOS 13.4 Developer Beta 1 and Public Beta 1 has been out for a little while now, a little bit longer for developers, and public beta testers have had about a good week at this point to test this out. And so I thought I'd talk about my experience a little bit. I've been using it primarily on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, along with the iPhone 8 Plus that I have here and the iPad Pro from 2018. It's my 12.9-inch iPad Pro. So I'll talk about the experience on all of these devices. Then I'll talk about your experience and then some of your comments. Now, I did run a YouTube community poll a week ago based off Beta 1, and many of you continued to comment and vote on that. So we'll continue to use that one, and when Beta 2 comes out, probably this week or so, I'll talk about that and run a different poll for that particular update. So this update, or iOS 13.4 Beta 1 on my iPhone 11 Pro Max, has been really solid, and the experience changed over time. Initially, I had all sorts of issues with Wi-Fi and LTE, and not with them switching, but rather I had issues with the speed. Sometimes it would be fast, sometimes it would be slow. If I went to apple.com, sometimes it just wouldn't load for some reason. So it was acting really weird, and when it wasn't loading on Wi-Fi, I could turn it off, switch to LTE, and it would load fine. Then it wouldn't load fine on LTE, switch back, and it was fine. After a few days, that problem completely went away, and it's been great ever since. And performance overall has been fantastic. I've had no issues loading apps or anything like that. And RAM management in general has been okay, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But first, let me talk about one other issue I was having, and I'm still having, and that has to do with mail. Now, this particular update changed some of those mail features, but still I'm having issues with mail. So it might tell me that I have 10 email here. I go into the email app and they're just not there. Then I'll refresh it, or sometimes close out of the email app, and they'll show up. And this has been such an issue with iOS 13. They made some changes to mail that I'm not sure what keeps causing the problems, but it just makes me want to switch to a different email client. So I've been looking at some others. I've used Edison and Spark and Outlook and all of those in the past. I really just like the stock email app, but I'm getting very close to changing because I just can't deal with all the issues with it. But other than the mail issue that I'm having, with all the new features in iOS 13.4, we can expect some new features and new updates with Beta 2 and some more as we get closer to the final release, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. But performance has been great, like I said, and RAM management has been okay for the most part, but there's certain apps such as Instagram and sometimes YouTube. When I open up YouTube, it reloads, and I find it really is only between those two apps for some reason. But other apps like, well, maybe other apps are reloading now. So this is just new for me. But throughout today, none of these apps were reloading, and now all of a sudden they are. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. Music's not reloading, but weather was. But prior to this, I could open about 20 applications before another one would reload. Now it seems a few of them are doing that. So it's kind of strange what's going on with RAM management, but for the most part, it's been good, with the exception of Instagram today and YouTube. Otherwise, it's been fine. Now, battery life has been good enough for me that I really haven't noticed it, although I have been using the iPad more today than previous days. But you'll see I'm at 63% for my current battery. It's 12:03 in the morning, but let's take a look at battery here. So if we go to battery health, I'm at 100% battery health. That doesn't really change too much, and updates don't really affect that. They're just rechecking them. But let's take a look at my actual usage. So yesterday I had 3 hours and 44 minutes of screen on time, 1 hour and 37 minutes of screen off time. Now, I used about 35 to 40% of my battery with that. So maybe I'd get about 8 hours of screen on time to 10, depending on how I'm using it. Screen off time is generally when you're playing music and the display is off, something like that. Now, iPad OS has been really good. I've had no issues with it whatsoever, with the exception of YouTube. The YouTube app seems to really lock up and freeze from time to time, and this has been an issue with the YouTube app since iOS 13. But basically, you could be playing a video and it just won't load the right resolution, and then it will, even though I have the bandwidth to handle that over my Wi-Fi network. If I go to Safari or Chrome or any other application that will run YouTube, I can actually run it there in full resolution, no problem. I just can't do it in the app. Otherwise, for the iPad, I had zero issues whatsoever. So I'm really happy with this, although we're not seeing a ton of changes with the iPad OS updates. this has actually been pretty solid for me and very usable. So I have no complaints with it, but I just wanted to follow up on that. Now, when talking about issues that many of you have had, there have not been that many, but there were a couple that stood out to me. One of them has to do with the iPhone 8 Plus in particular, when you rotate to landscape. Some people are saying they have issues with this. Now, if you have one of the larger phones, the Plus phones with a home button, you can rotate the home screen to landscape. Why they didn't carry it over to things like the 11 Pro Max or the 10s Max, I'm not really sure, but you can do that on the 8 Plus. I haven't really seen any issues with it, but I have this in here to show you. And performance and everything, not only on the 8 Plus, but going back to the iPhone 6s, 6s Plus, 7 Plus, iPhone SE, and everything else, performance has been really good. There's been very few complaints about it. Now, the other thing, though, that one person mentioned was issues with GPS. So if they were using an app outside of Apple's maps, maybe Google Maps or Waze or something along those lines, they were saying it couldn't find location or GPS signal. And they tried turning location off, turning it back on, privacy settings, all sorts of things by going into their settings and messing around with privacy and location services, and for some reason it wasn't working for them. So unfortunately, that I haven't really heard that a whole lot, so maybe this is just a small issue, but hopefully that gets fixed soon. Now, most of you reported battery life was actually pretty good as well. A lot of you, I would say about 90% of you, have said it's been excellent on everything from the iPhone 7 and older devices as well as newer devices. So that's good news to hear, although it is an early beta, so that's not too much of a concern. We really care more when iOS 13.4 finally comes out. Now let's take a look at the YouTube community poll. We'll go to the community tab here. And this particular poll has 11,000 votes, so I really appreciate that. Now, I suspect, based off these numbers, a lot of people are waiting for or have already looked into jailbreaking and things like that with iOS 13.3. Now, I'm not sure if that's what you're doing or you just want to stay on an older version, but it looks like a lot of you are staying on older versions. And you'll see here, 12% of you said it was great, 3% said it was terrible, 6% said okay but some bugs, 64% of you are on iOS 13.3.1 or older, and 15% of you use Android. So I really appreciate all of those who are using Android, even though this has nothing to do with that. Thanks for voting on this. Now, there's 157 comments, and what I did, because I did go through the follow-up in a previous video, I went through all the new comments from the past 4 days or so. So we'll take a look at some of those. I'm only going to read about 5 of them. We'll take a look at them, and then we'll talk about when iOS 13.4 Beta 2 should come out. So the first comment says LTE issues on both iOS 13.4 and 13.3.1. Another comment says you could have kept an option not great, not terrible. That's what the option that's okay but some bugs is for. That means it's okay but there's still a few issues, so that it's not great, not terrible. On iPhone 7, running great, no app crashes that I was constantly having on, older versions of iOS 13. Seems to be running okay on my iPhone 10, but I have noticed battery life isn't as good as 13.3.1, and the device gets warm quite a bit while doing things like messaging and using Safari. I can't charge my iPhone in car. I keep getting this accessory is not supported error. I didn't have any issues before the update. You may want to try a different cable or flip the cable around, see what happens. That I've seen that before, but usually that will fix it, or you may have to downgrade from the beta to try it to get it to work. My notifications are messed up. iOS 13.4 has been released, but why not on my iPhone 8 Plus? It's for developers and public beta testers. It actually comes out at the exact same time around the world every single time they push it out. So if it's out for developers here, it's out for developers everywhere. And then the last person says, I'm on a 6S. There really was not a lot of comments from this particular past week or so. And I suspect that's because people were staying on 13.3 and 13.3.1. Now, as far as 13.4 Beta 2, I would expect it Monday or Tuesday of this week. So in a day or two, I would expect that. And it's possible that we will see iOS 13.3.2 due to the jailbreaking and maybe some tweaks and fixes there as well. So since Apple stopped signing iOS 13.3, we very well could see a new version that's just very minor for security patches and things like that. Other than that, there's not a whole lot more with iOS 13.4. I would expect some new features, a couple new things, and then emoji to be added before it comes out to the public. And I would think it comes out to the public in probably a month or so at this point. We're pretty early on in betas, so I would expect at least 4 betas with this, although that could change. Now, iOS 14 we'll see in June, so I can't wait to see that, but that won't be out to the public until September, as they normally do, unless they change something along those lines. But in March, we should see probably some new MacBooks, 13-inch MacBooks, along with that new iPhone 9 or iPhone SE2 or whatever it's going to be called. And we should see maybe a new iPad as well. So all of these things are coming up. Let me know what you think about all of that in the comments below. If you'd like to get your hands on this wallpaper, of course, I'll link it in the description as I always do. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. And if you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. As always, thanks for watching. This is Aaron. I'll see you next time.